Nightly greetings, one and all. Proud Filipina Sharm Zespina here, and this is PTV News Now. While Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza has grabbed and gripped the entire planet, quietly Russia and North Korea are going about their sneaky and stealthy ways, beefing up their arsenal of weapons and strengthening military ties. This according to a wary U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The United States, Japan, and South Korea have time and again scored Pyongyang and Moscow's collaboration in helping the latter in its war versus Ukraine with hardware and war material in exchange for assistance in space technology. This rather unholy alliance is forged and fueled by both countries' utter disdain over sanctions imposed by the United States for Moscow's nefarious plans to invade and retake Ukraine's and Pyongyang's unfettered nuclear weaponry, advances, and ballistic missile launches. And the U.S. is prodding the third and silent partner in the equation, China, to rein them in given its power and influence over them. Last month, Vladimir Putin flew to Beijing for the Third Belt and Road Forum and joined in the grand celebration of the 10th anniversary of President Xi Jinping's brainchild. In September, North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un took a highly secretive train ride to Russia to meet with Vladimir Putin and whatever else in the confidential agenda. Blinken's warning earlier today comes amidst a meeting of G7 nations in Tokyo. In the meantime, British Interior Minister Suella Braverman expressed disdain over what she perceived was too much leniency allowed on the latest protesters supporting Gaza civilian casualties and victims on Armistice Day, which she dubbed pro-Palestinian mobs. Braverman described today's protest action in support of Palestinians as hate marches and insisted the march was not a mere cry for help for Gaza, and accused senior police officers of playing favorites on protesters. A former police watchdog chief, Tom Windsor, assailed Braverman's rather arbitrary claim and said it ran counter to the principle of police independence. London has also seen mass demonstrations over 4 weeks in a row on a growing worldwide pushback against Israel's wanton bombardment of Gaza and the unnecessary slaughter of innocent civilians that has reached over 10,300 of late. The annual Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit kicks off Wednesday next week against a backdrop of a world in turmoil. Though discussions and deals are amongst themselves and non-binding on others, they lay the foundation for other fora that culminate in written pacts or agreements. VOA's Elizabeth Lee has more on the APEC's agenda this year in this report.
From the Israel-Hamas conflict to war in Ukraine, this year's APEC meeting of world leaders is unlike any other in recent history.
It's significant and arguably unprecedented. We have systemic instability right now, the likes of which we probably haven't seen since the end of the Cold War.
There are also the potential economic ripple effects of these conflicts.
There's an arc of instability, and it's an arc of instability that connects regions through supply chains, that connects regions through a variety of other channels. And it's important to keep in mind, for all the talk about decoupling, de-risking, the global economy does remain substantially interdependent.
The 21 members of APEC not only differ in their opinions about the conflicts, there are also other sources of friction. There are territorial disagreements in the South China Sea, and tensions continue between the U.S. and China. Against this backdrop, countries will try to find common ground and discuss non-binding topics with an agenda set by the host country.
We've really focused on things like advancing a just energy transition in the Asia-Pacific, advancing sustainable agri-food systems in the Asia-Pacific, looking at sustainable and inclusive trade across the region.
Another area of concern, how to reduce supply chain risks, with lessons learned from the breakdown during the pandemic.
I think what you will see is about sort of resilience, redundancy, to make sure that there's no one point of failure in the event of a pandemic.
For example, while the U.S. has been importing more goods from countries including Vietnam,
ultimately, many of the raw materials and also the components, they're still made in China.
China-U.S. relations will continue to be watched by APEC members, even after the APEC leaders meeting, at a time when public perception in many countries tend to skew toward the U.S. And the U.S. is seen to intervene more in other countries' affairs than China, according to surveys conducted by Pew Research.
The U.S. is also largely seen to take into account the interests of other countries more than China, and to be more likely to contribute to global peace and stability.
The United States and China are going to have to find a way to coexist. Unlike the Cold War, which ended with the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Washington isn't going anywhere, Beijing isn't going anywhere, the competition, it'll have its oscillations, but it's a competition that isn't going to have some definitive end.
In addition to China and the U.S., APEC economies make up approximately half the global trade and 60% of the world's economy. And in an interconnected world, observers say leaders will need to transcend differences to combat issues such as climate change and food insecurity. Elizabeth Lee, VOA News, Washington.
Now let's turn it over to our colleague in the beautiful and cool Pine City for what's cooking lately in the Cordilleras. Ala?
Naimagarabi Pilipinas, 2,000 estudyante iti Ifugao State University iti nagbenepisyo iti educational assistance manibod iti assistance to individuals in crisis situation program ti DSWD. Nagtaod ti pondo para iti nasaatulong manibod iti opisina ni Senator Amy Marcos. Sigun kini Coordinator Aloysius Buyukan anang ibagi iti Senator. Pasat dayto iti programa ti opisyal tapno maadaan iti oportunidad dagiti agtutubo ng runa iti panag-eskwela dagitoy. 5,000 a piso sinaawat a cash assistance ti tunggal estudyante. Sigun kadagiti benepisaryo dakkel at tulong tinaawat da ng runa iti pagkasapulan dagitoy. Nang ipaipay ni Senator Marcos iti computer equipment sets iti 10 nga student organizations ti IPSU tapno masuportaran ti panagadal dagiti estudyante.
Romualdez Marcos, she understands the needs of students. That is why she is continuously fighting and doing efforts to open opportunities for the youth.
Iti sa balipayadamag ng rugin a dumalan iti mandatory training dagiti nangabak a sangguniang kabataan officials iti ili a sinait kas panang surot iti sangguniang kabataan Reform Act of 2015. Gagam ti panagsanay a maipayan iti nananay a kapanunutan dagiti nangabak nga agtutubo nga opisyales para iti napintas a panangidaulo ken tapno mapaduras ti kasasaad dagiti agtutubo. Barangay, buklan iti nadumuduma at topiko ti sangguniang kabataan mandatory training, akasapulan nga adalan di tunggal SK officials sakbay dang nga agtakam. Indawluan ti gobyerno lokal ti sinait ti mandatory training baban iti panakibunnulig ti Department of the Interior and Local Government ken National Youth Commission. Dagiti damdamag manipod dito'y PTV Cordillera, siyak ni Alas Sunduan, Naimbag, Rabi.
And that's a wrap for tonight. We hope you all join us tomorrow night, same time, same channel for what's breaking lately all around the planet. This has been Sharms Espina urging you to keep fit and stay aware. Be kind and give thanks and catch the news right here. Good evening.